I'd been filming clips at my garage workbench for 2 years before one of the people watching figured out the window. And then he came and stood on the other side of it while I worked. By the way, I'm Sutton, 34. I build cabinets for a living out in Fort Wayne. At night I refinish old guitars in the garage because it's the one thing that shuts my head off. I posted the clips for other guys who do it. Sanding, spraying lacquer, buffing a body until it looks wet. A few hundred followers, most of them names I half recognized. Nothing that felt like the world could reach through. The first thing that was wrong, I almost missed. Somebody left a comment about my water tower. Said the city name painted on it was half worn off, which, honestly, it is. But here's the thing. I'd never once pointed a camera at that tower. It only shows up as a gray smudge in the corner of the window behind my bench. Way out past the alley. You'd have to freeze the frame and lean in to even know it was a tower. He'd done that. He'd sat with a 30-second sanding video and read a word I can't read from my own driveway. I want to be honest. At the time I thought it was kind of cool. Somebody paying that much attention. Let me back up, because the attention got specific fast. He knew I bought my strings from Sweetwater. That one isn't a stretch. It's right here in town, everybody does. But then he knew the exact set, the gauge, because he'd caught the box on my bench in one clip and read the label. He knew my dog by the jingle of her tags off camera. He knew I worked days somewhere else, because the garage clips only ever went up after dark. None of it was a secret. That was the part that took me a while to understand. He wasn't stealing anything. I was handing it all over, one video at a time, and calling it my hobby. He knew the street, too, and that one I gift wrapped. A parts box had sat on my bench in a clip for maybe half a second. The shipping label was facing out. Long enough. Fort Wayne is 3 rivers and not much else, the kind of place where nothing happens and everybody says so. I'd stopped thinking of it as somewhere a stranger would ever bother to find. I was wrong about the bother. Then he said a thing that stopped me for a second. He mentioned the old Telecaster hanging on my pegboard. Called it by its color. That guitar has never been in a single clip. It hangs on the wall behind me, off to the side, where you would only see it if you were looking through the glass at the room itself. Not at a video of the room. At the room. I told myself I must have panned past it once. I never did. I checked. Then the messages got quieter, and worse. He stopped asking about guitars. He started telling me things. That my alley floods on the north end when it rains hard, which it does. That the light over my side door flickered before it finally went out. Which it did, for weeks. You cannot see that side door in one single clip. He'd have to stand in the alley, at night, looking at my house, to know that light stuttered. I read that message 4 times. Then I went and looked at the side door. The light was steady. I'd already changed the bulb, which meant he had seen it broken before I fixed it. A while ago. And I just hadn't known yet to be afraid. A day later he wrote again. He said the new light was better. I don't know how to make you feel what that did to me. He had watched me carry a ladder out and swap a bulb. Then he had told me he approved. He wasn't describing anything I posted. There was nothing to post. He was describing my Tuesday. A couple days on, he got smaller and closer. He asked if the Coney place on my corner was any good. Said he might be in the area. I have never posted that corner. I sat with my phone and did the math on what in the area meant. Coming from a man who lived 2 states off, it couldn't mean anything but bad. And here is the part one keep coming back to. I still didn't stop. I told myself he was some lonely guy 2 states over who liked woodworking. I told myself the flooding and the light were lucky guesses. My buddy at the shop said block him and move on. I meant to. I didn't. Blocking one account felt dramatic for a man I had never seen. About a week later, I found the strings. I go out to the garage most mornings before work to check whatever's drying. That morning there was a coil of guitar strings sitting on the outside sill of the window. My brand. My gauge. Still sealed in the paper sleeve. On the outside of the glass, on the ledge. Where you would have to walk up my driveway, past the gate, and reach across the flower bed to set them down. They were cold. I mean actually cold, like they'd been out there all night. I stood there holding them, and it landed on me slow. The evening before, I'd been 10 feet away. Sanding. Filming. And he had come up to that window in the dark and left me a present on the wrong side of it. He had been that close. The glass was the only thing between us, and I'd had my back to it the whole time. There was one more thing that morning. The side gate, the one I never latched because the latch sticks, was latched. Somebody had come through it and closed it behind them. Neat. The way you do at a house you're being careful at. I didn't sleep much after that. I put a camera up over the garage, a real one, the kind that records to a card. And for 4 nights, nothing. I started to feel stupid again. The 5th night, it caught him. Not doing anything, and that's the part nobody tells you. He wasn't breaking in. He was just standing at my window at 2 in the morning. Hands in his pockets. Looking through the glass at my empty bench. For 6 minutes. He had found the exact spot the tower sits in the frame of my videos, and he'd put himself in it. He was standing where the shot is. Like he wanted to be inside the picture I'd been making for 2 years. My neighbor across the alley is an older guy, up at all hours with a police scanner. He told me later he'd seen a car he didn't know parked on the north end 3 or 4 nights running. Out of state plate. He'd figured it was somebody's cousin, visiting for the holidays. He gave the officers the plate. The man had driven 6 hours. He didn't live 2 states away because he was lonely. He lived 2 states away and he came anyway, more than once. They picked him up at a gas station off the interstate the next week. And I know I'm supposed to feel like it's over. It isn't the kind of thing that's over. I took every clip down. All of it. 2 years, gone in an afternoon. The guys at the shop gave me grief, the guitar guy who quit posting guitars. I let them. It's easier than the truth. The truth is I can't stand at that bench anymore without checking the black glass behind me. Because I know now what a window does at night. It doesn't show you what's outside. It shows you yourself. Sitting there, lit up, easy to find. I kept the strings. I couldn't tell you exactly why. They're in the bottom drawer of the bench, still sealed. I don't throw them out and I don't use them. Every so often I open that drawer for a clamp, and there they are. Cold once. My brand. Left on the wrong side of my own window, by a man who watched me through the glass for 2 years and thought the show was for him. I thought I was showing people my work. I was showing one of them the way in.
So I posted a story from my coffee shop. Before I'd even finished the drink, a stranger messaged me a photo of the same table, shot from the sidewalk outside, through the glass. I'll call myself Marlo. I was 27, and I ran a little vintage account. Thrifting and flipping, the kind of thing that pays for itself if you're lucky. A few thousand followers. I posted constantly, because that is the job, honestly. You post, or you disappear. Chattanooga. Born and raised. I say y'all. I drink my sweet tea, the whole thing. I'm the girl who'll hit 3 Goodwills before noon and have all of it online by lunch. The photo through the window didn't come with a message. Just the picture. My drink, my table, my elbow, taken from out on Fraser Avenue. Close enough that I should have seen him standing there. I looked up. Nobody. He'd already moved on. I told myself it was a coincidence. Somebody at the shop being weird. The thing is, it kept happening. And coincidence has a shape, and this stopped having it. He would reply within a minute of me posting a story. Every time. With something from just outside the frame. I'd post my drink and he'd mention the busker who plays down the block, who wasn't in my video. I'd post a rack of dresses and he'd say the light was nicer on the mountainside today. He always knew where I was, in the actual minute I was there. Not where I'd been an hour ago. Where I was right then. One time I posted from a booth downtown and joked that I was starving. He replied that the pretzel place next door was still open. It was 10 feet from my booth, out of frame, and he knew it was 10 feet from my booth. He was placing me on a block in real time. Like a dot he could watch move. I want to explain what that does to you, because it isn't one big scare. It's a slow understanding that you're being read in real time. That the little window you thought you were holding up to the world is a window somebody is standing on the other side of. Then it started beating me places. I posted one morning that I was headed to a spot in St. Elmo I loved. One of those cluttered antique malls. A reply came in before I'd even parked. He hoped I'd find something good in there. When I walked in, the woman at the counter looked at me funny. She asked, real careful, if I knew some guy. Because a man had come in 20 minutes before, asking whether the girl from the videos ever shopped there. He'd gotten there first. He'd been standing in the aisle I was about to walk down, waiting to see if I'd show. That should have been the end of me posting. It wasn't. I want to be honest about that. You talk yourself out of it. Because the alternative is admitting your whole life is the problem. Then, a few days after, he replied to a story about my jacket. Said the mustard color suited me. I hadn't posted a photo of myself. I'd posted a shelf. The only way to see what I had on that morning was to see me in it, on the street, from behind. And he had. There was a night he replied to a nothing story, just my hands and a coffee, and told me I'd parked crooked. I had. I'd rushed it and left the back of my car hanging into the next spot, and been embarrassed for 2 seconds and forgotten. He hadn't. He'd been close enough to my car on my street to see how I left it, and close enough to my phone to tell me about it before I'd gone to bed. Let me tell you the one that finally stopped me cold. I was home, on my porch, filming a plant I was proud of. A big trailing thing I'd nursed back from half dead. 20 seconds, tops. Behind me was my door, part of the rail, and nothing else. I checked. I always checked by then. He replied inside a minute. He said the mountain looked good from my steps tonight. You can't see the mountain in that video. You can only see it if you are standing where I was standing. On my steps. Which meant he wasn't watching my story to find out where I was. He was already on my street, looking at my actual house. And he was watching my story to know that I had just walked back inside. Chattanooga is a mountain town. Lookout sits over everything. And I had never once thought about the fact that the same ridgeline in the background of my posts is a pin on a map. Post enough porch videos with the same mountain at the same angle, and you have drawn an arrow at your own front steps. I'd done it for 2 years. I'd geotagged half of it, too, back before I thought about any of this. I had handed him the neighborhood. And then I stood on the porch so he could find the house. I did go to the police. I brought screenshots. The photo through the window, the mountain message, the antique mall, all of it. The officer was kind, honestly. But he told me what I already half knew. The man had never threatened me. Never touched me. Public sidewalk, public posts, public mountain. There was nothing to charge him with. Come back, he said, if it escalates. I remember thinking, what does escalate look like when he's already been on my steps? My neighbor 2 doors up is an older woman who misses nothing. She brought it up without me saying a word. She'd seen a man on the sidewalk more than once, in the evenings, just standing, looking at the houses on our side. She'd figured he was waiting on a ride. She hadn't liked his stillness, was how she put it. When I asked what he looked like, her answer matched what the barista would tell me later, and neither of them matched anybody I knew. The barista was the closest thing I ever got to proof I wasn't imagining it. She said a guy had come in a handful of times, always right after I left. Always asking if that was the girl from the thrift videos. Always real polite. She'd felt off about it and never said anything, because what do you even say? She described him. Nobody I had ever seen in my life. Which was almost worse. I'd been picturing someone from my own world. He was no one. He was just a viewer. Here is what I did, and it isn't brave, it's just what was left. I deleted the account. 2 years of it. The followers. The little business. The community I actually loved. The messages from girls who liked the same junk I did. Gone in one night. Because every single post was a breadcrumb, and I couldn't tell anymore which ones were safe. I stopped geotagging. I stopped posting the porch. Then I stopped posting anything at all. I couldn't find the line, and no line felt far enough back. I don't remember blocking him, honestly. I remember my hands not working right while I did it. I remember being sure he'd just make another account and watch from there. He probably did. I will never know. It's been a while now. He never did the one thing the police could use. So there's no ending where somebody tells me it's over. There is just me. Off the internet. In a town I used to love being visible in. Checking the street before I sit down on my own porch. And here's the part one can't shake. I used to think the account was me letting people in. Sweet, right? Building a little world. It wasn't that. It was me leaving my door open one post at a time and calling it a life. I drew him the map. I stood on the X. The only thing I ever got to decide was when to stop. And by the time I decided, he already knew the way.
I called the ambulance myself. One hand not working right, sitting on the floor of my own kitchen. The man who put me there had never been closer to me than a comment under a video. Until he was standing in my house. I'm not going to put my name on this one. I was 31. I cooked the line at a barbecue place on the east side of Kansas City. Burnt ends and long nights. And until one Tuesday, I had maybe 40 followers online, and all of them were people I actually knew. Then a customer filmed me. We had a family come in near close. A mom and 2 kids. Her card kept getting declined, and she was doing that quiet thing where you pretend you weren't that hungry anyway. So I comped it. Boxed up extra for the road. It is not a big deal. Anybody on that line would have done it. But a guy 2 tables over filmed the whole thing. Put it up. Tagged the restaurant. By the next morning it had 4 million views. 4 million. I mean, you can't feel a number like that. It's just a counter going up. Thousands of comments, all of them warm. All of them "You're a good dude, restore my faith." And I read every one like an idiot, because it felt amazing. My manager was thrilled. We had a line out the door for a week. The local news even did a little segment. For about 10 days, I was the nicest guy in Kansas City, and I liked it. People I hadn't talked to since high school messaged me. A couple of other places offered me a shift. My mom sent me the link 3 separate times, not realizing the first 2 times that it was me. It was the best week I'd had in years, and I want that on the record. It's what makes the rest of it so hard to explain. The same wave that felt like the whole city hugging me had one man in it. And I couldn't have found him if I tried. One of those comments was him. I will never know which one. That's the thing nobody warns you about a crowd that size. The one who is going to take your life apart looks exactly like the ones who love you. Same words, even. You're a good dude. He didn't come at me online first. He came to the restaurant. The video had tagged the place, so that part took him no effort at all. He started coming in. Always my section. Always polite. Always asking was I working the next night. The other cooks clocked him before I did. Marco, on the smoker, asked me one night who the guy was that kept waiting for my shift. I said I had no idea. He said, that's the problem. Then it got worse, because the restaurant kept reposting that viral video with my schedule attached, basically advertising exactly when I'd be standing at that window. One night he stayed past close, nursing a sweet tea. When I came out from the back, he told me he tried the burnt ends because I'd recommended them in the video. I never recommended anything in that video. I hadn't said a word about the food. He'd built a whole conversation between us that had only ever happened on his side of a screen. And he was standing in my restaurant, acting out his half of it. Home took him a little longer, and this is the part one did to myself. In all the excitement, I posted a couple of things. Me on my porch with a beer, the old Western Auto sign lit up red on the hill behind me. A run I did along the river. Nothing, I thought. Turns out a lit up landmark behind your head, plus a running route, is an address. If somebody wants it badly enough. He wanted it badly enough. The messages got specific. He mentioned the sign behind my porch. He mentioned my street by the sound of the trains going through at night. Honestly, I told myself the same thing everybody tells themselves. He's a fan. It's flattering. It's a little much. I switched my accounts to private and figured that was that. He wrote once more before I locked things down. He said my neighbor's dog, the one that barks at the trains, must keep me up. It does. There's a dog 2 houses over that loses its mind every time a train comes through. No post of mine had ever mentioned it, because who would? He knew because he'd stood on my block long enough to hear it for himself. Then I came home and he was on my steps. Sitting there like he lived there. Calm. A to-go box from my own restaurant open on his knee. He looked up at me and he said my line back to me. The exact thing I'd said to that mom in the video. Word for word. In my own voice, practically. Said it warm. Like it was a thing the two of us shared. I don't remember what I said back. I remember getting in my car, driving to my buddy's place, and not going home that night. I did the things you're supposed to do. Let me back up, because I want to be fair. I called the police, and they took it more seriously than they'd have taken a stranger online, because he'd been on my property. I installed a security camera over the door. I stopped posting entirely. And for 8 days, it was quiet, and I let myself believe he'd lost interest. He had not lost interest. He was waiting for me to relax. On the 6th of those days, my camera caught him walking past the house. Slow. Not stopping. Just letting me see, later, that quiet didn't mean gone. On the 8th day, a to-go box from the restaurant was sitting on my porch rail when I got home. Empty. Folded shut. I hadn't brought it. Nobody had knocked. I stood on my own steps holding it. I told myself a coworker had dropped it by. I knew a coworker hadn't. I went inside anyway, because I was tired of being afraid in my own driveway. That was the night. I don't remember most of what happened in that kitchen, honestly. I've tried. I remember the back door, which I know I locked. I remember him already inside. Already calm. Still talking to me like a friend. And the calm was the worst part, worse than if he'd been screaming. I remember reaching for the knife block on the counter and my hand not getting there. I remember the floor. I remember the box. A to-go box from the restaurant, sitting on my counter like he had brought me dinner. He was arrested that night, and the camera over my door had all of it, and it turned out he had driven 11 hours to get to my kitchen. My hand is mostly fine now. That's not the part that stayed. The part that stayed is that everybody kept telling me how lucky I was. Once in a lifetime, they said. A thing like that going viral, you ought to frame it. And all I could think was that it only takes once. He found me in a crowd of 4 million. He picked me out of everyone who ever typed "you're a good dude." And there was no way, none, to tell his kindness from any of theirs. Not until he was standing on my floor. I took it all down. The video is still out there, though. People re-upload it. It still gets comments. Warm ones, mostly. Good dude, they say. Restore my faith. And I sit there and I read them, because I can't help it. And I think about how the next one is already in there somewhere. Saying the nicest thing. Meaning something else entirely. And how I would never, ever be able to tell.